What's going on, great people in the land? Of course, the world, but the land tonight. I'm your host, Nicholas Wilcox, alongside my partner in crime, number one, ace in the hole. Give it up for my co host, Johnny Main. Johnny, say hello to the great people.
I would say hello, but I'm just floating on cloud nine right now, feeling good about week 11 and all of the things. Well, most of the things, but I'm feeling great. What up? What up? What up, everybody? What up? How's it going, man? I hope y'all having a great night tonight. And if y'all aren't, then guess what? It's about to get a hell of a lot better because we're going to make it that way for you for sure.
Welcome to week 12 of the Fantasy Football Show. The week 11 reactions, the waiver wire, anything else you guys cooking up? We're here to serve. Got your backs. It's been like I told Johnny, it's been a wild 11 weeks in the NFL. And it usually is, right? The NFL always comes with its curveballs, whether it be injuries, whether it be underperforming teams, overperforming teams, teams that come out of nowhere, start playing really well. Like the NFL's got it all, It's a drama series, right?
Drama.
That's another story for another day. But in terms of how we see things, the landscape of everything, we're gonna look over everything and all that, what's upcoming, how we can best serve you, for your overall season-long leagues. If you guys got any questions regarding those, drop them in the chat. Just make sure you guys are describing the type of league you're in, based on scoring format and where, in terms of if you guys still got trades you guys are going on in your leagues, definitely we'll take questions on those too, because there's still some leagues out there that their trade deadline settings are for the end of week 12. I know some leagues already as trade deadlines are over, so we didn't exactly include the buy low sell highs here. But we would love to answer any questions you guys have in terms of any trades that happen in your league still, that you can still pull off. We're gonna get right into what we noticed from week 11. So, Johnny, take the floor on what you noticed from week 11. Here's the caveat: you can't talk about Steelers yet.
All right, I got a little bit of a different approach this week. I'm going to try something new about what I noticed this week. I'm going to start from a fantasy perspective, and then I'll get to the team perspective.
Sure.
Week 11, the number one player, Taysom Hill.
I know.
The Joker, the wild card, right?
Literally.
The wild card.
Literally,
right?
Literally.
Yeah, and it seems like
himself, yo.
It seems like we're having more of these weeks than not now with Taysom Hill. But the number one player overall in week 11. So in DFS, if you didn't have him, you weren't winning. And then interesting thing, number one quarterback, Jared Goff at 34.6 points this week. And so by default, the number one wide receiver, Amon-Ra St. Brown, 38 and some change in PPR formats. And then number one, I think it's time we start showing him some. I wouldn't say it's time we start showing him some love, because I feel like we've been giving him love, but I had a blind spot for him all year long. Number one running back for the week, the most slept on running back in the NFL, Joseph Mixon, coming through for the Texans on Monday Night Football. So those were some really interesting takes for me. I know you're loving everything I'm saying right now. So
just the last part was, yeah,
you probably could have did without. So now I'm going to fast forward to the most unlikely players at their position that finished at like QB1, RB1, wide receiver 1. Anthony Richardson having a career game, right? He's you could say like he was one of the guys we had looked at during the offseason, potentially as like somebody who could be QB1, MVP. There was all kinds. So then he gets benched, and then he comes out and throws up 28 points and finishes at QB4 for week 11. And then a theme for this year, older running backs getting busy. Austin Eckler finishing at running back 8. 17 points and some change. And Austin Eckler's been really nice coming down the stretch. If you had
old man strength.
Yeah, man. Yeah. You got a mortgage strength. You know what I mean? You got a mortgage. God forbid he goes out there and lives. God forbid he goes out there and lives in the world like the rest of us folks. He need that milli money. And then again, man, just a couple of reoccurring themes. Josh Downs, wide receiver 19 and some change.
Really?
Yeah, man. Listen, dude. I know that. But you know, somebody else that almost made the list but didn't was Quentin Johnson. Actually, so that's
Calvin Ridley because he got a 51-yard freaking touchdown called back,
no,
and that would have blew up his day for sure.
Listen, Nico Collins in the touchdown call back last night cost me about 600 bones, man. I had Joe Mixon for 2 touchdowns, 60 yards. Nico for 90 and a touch, blew up. We'll talk about that later. And then at tight end, the wasteland that has continued to be tight end. I wouldn't say it's unlikely, but like just really rare. Like, because the other guy nobody would have even played. But Zach Ertz, tight end 5, 18 points and some change. So from a fantasy side of things, that's absolutely what I had noticed was that. And then we talk about like season long, and I'll keep it short because I'm on my soapbox here. But a couple things that like I noticed, man, was like, I think things might be starting to change for the baby. Things might be starting to change for the Chicago Bears, but I wear it well though, baby. The Chicago Bears put up a really good fight against the Green Bay Packers. The Packers of Green Bay as they triumphed by stopping the Bears of Chicago. That was something, and then. Like I seen a tweet about the Lions, like the Lions are just out here running up the score like they paying other teams like $1 million to come here for homecoming. So shout out them. And then the Jets, man, like not like just jetting it. Like, dude, like, well, you told me I couldn't talk about the Steelers, so I have to talk about the Jets.
Can't talk about the Jets either. That's no.
Yeah. I seen a tweet that was also
money. Talk about the Ravens and how they suck. You could have done that.
Yeah, don't worry, I'll get
that. Would have been a perfect segue. Yeah.
The Jets. I see a beautiful tweet. We're not gonna call him Sauce anymore. We're just gonna call him Ahmed. So there's that. The Pittsburgh Steelers. Yeah, they're for real, like we've been talking about. George Pickens, Russ Wilson, Najee Harris, the whole crew, JPJ. That's who I'm rocking tonight, baby. JPJ, playmaker, big time win. Turn right back around and get ready to get Cleveland on Thursday. But then we got to talk about Denver Broncos and their defense, right? Like that and Bo Nix and that crew, man, looking really good. Somebody that did make my list of like unexpected fantasy performances was Javonte Williams. I think he finished the week as an RB1, so that was really dope to see if you're a Javonte owner. And like, what's going on in San Francisco, man? I think that's something else. Like
taking all my bullet points.
Yeah. Okay. Then I will let you talk. I will let you talk about the Sunday night game.
On the bone, as they say.
I'll let you talk about the Sunday night game and KC. And I didn't even go on the Steelers, so I'm cooking. I'm sorry.
Oh, but man, it's cooking. It ain't sharing the plate.
That's that prop shop talking. That's it. Go ahead.
Fair enough. Hey, you come up with your own segment. You know that. I think we already did with the old man segment. So I
love the old man segment.
Just give
me 7 minutes just to go on a rant. Just give me 7 minutes to go on a rant, and then we'll call it good, man. I'll take it.
Oh boy. So what we know, what I noticed from week 11 was, like look, Denver being for real. I think we have to definitely take them as a little bit more seriously than we thought. Atlanta on the other side of things, it's like 6 points on the road in a game where necessarily just didn't come out any no bite, no hunger, no nothing. And it was just too bad because like literally they could have pretty much ran away with the NFC South division, pretty much clamped things up if they actually had showing up in the game. But Denver just smacked them around, patty whacked them, whatever you want to call it.
Molly Wops.
all of that. Niners Same thing. It's like Niners. We're not taking you seriously anymore. Like Niners are not a serious team to me right now. Um, call it injuries, call it Super Bowl hangover, whatever. I said this team, the Niners, before coming into the season, was a team that I just couldn't rate so highly, just because not only just the Super Bowl hangover, but more about just this team with the Ayuk signing, all the drama that came with it, and then it turns out he gets hurt, done for the season now. And then injuries just caught up with this team as well. Started with CMC before even week 1 happened. So there's a lot of things that obviously things just come around. The Niners still have opportunities still. It's not like they're like eliminated or anything. It's just there's not a Super Bowl contending team at the moment. The defense has looked okay, but it hasn't looked stellar. They've been just kind of middle of the pack based on metrics, and it's like we just can't take this team as seriously. Chiefs finally lose a game, right? It was due to happen. And this was the game that people probably circle around that could happen. And that's fine. But Travis Kelce, 1 catch, 8 yards. Make it make sense, is what I'm trying to say. Make it make sense, Patrick Mahomes. The Chiefs needed a loss. They were just kind of, in my eyes, at some point, they're just running on fumes. They were a team in which, they were winning games by 1 possessions constantly. And even last week, where they probably should have lost to Denver, because literally, like, probability of Denver kicking that field goal to win the game, like, is 75% probability wise. And they didn't lose that game because they blocked the field goal. So, but yeah, look, kudos to Buffalo, kudos Josh Allen. He had no Dalton Kincaid in the game. No Keon Coleman. So kudos to Buffalo making it happen through the running game. Josh Allen looking like the Swiss Army knife like he does. He had barely did anything to the run until that final play in which he runs in a touchdown from like 26 yards out. And just looking like the rolling machine that he is. And, again, kudos to Buffalo again. They really look like a team that can definitely very, very, quite frankly, win the AFC right now. They've just been playing really hot football lately as of late. They haven't lost since that Texans game early on in the year. So they are on a 6-game win streak right now, going into their bye week. So must feel good for Buffalo to do that. But in terms of how we see the AFC, Ravens obviously going down to the Steelers. It's like the Ravens now, it's like this team looked like a team in which offensively, like we know we're like a juggernaut per se, but now it's like we're kind of understanding where the Ravens kind of fall down to pieces when it comes to like pretty competitive defenses. Like Denver is kind of an outlier because they look too good against Denver. But now the Steelers, the Browns a couple weeks ago, and just again, they're not looking like a team that they're starting to look like how they looked like last year.
I'm not gonna go
these
old
closer
man.
games.
I'm not gonna go old man, but I would just say like for me, and I think like people like some of the cats talked about it on some of like the bigger stations and stuff, right? But like for me, I think just a microcosm of who the Ravens are and what Harbaugh is about, just overall. How in the world can you be going for a 2-point conversion to win the game and you don't have Derrick Henry in the game?
Yeah,
Like never mind the amount of carries that he had in the game. I think that's easy for people to look at, right? But when the money's on the tape, when the money's on the table and you got Derrick Henry on your roster to get 2 yards and you don't have him in the game as even a potential threat, like everybody in the building knows what's going to happen at that point in time, right? So for me, I think the Ravens are still a respectable team, and like they're still going to be a menace to everybody else, like for sure. And I even still think, right, like the next matchup, I wouldn't be shocked if Derrick Henry got the ball 33 times the next time the Steelers play. But I just think like overall, just in that space right there, like that snippet for me just says it
my
all.
question really is, it's like, what is going on with the play calling when it comes to these type of formats? It's like, my problem here is that, look, yeah, we could talk about Henry not being in the game, like for that 2-point conversion. And look, if I got a battery on my Derrick Henry, you got to at least give him a touch in that scenario. 13 carries, 65 yards. Lamar Jackson throwing the ball 33 times. It's like, I understand both of these teams are pretty stout against the run. In some cases, you even talked about on Sunday with the Steelers kind of looking like, if they do start running the ball against us, like, I don't know, like, I
Right.
don't know per se, but we do look a little vulnerable. It's like,
Yeah.
I don't understand how as a team, 19 carries overall, Lamar only has 4 of those. Henry has 13. It's just the game script, and when it gets these weird, like these need to have it type of games, the game script is always where they just keep chucking with Lamar.
Yeah.
Now, this year, I put more onus on Lamar because now he has more of that play calling, switching things in line of scrimmage, stuff like that, than he had ever had before. But now it's like, look, like now it's again the Browns a couple weeks ago, you know what I'm saying, and then now it's like with the Steelers, your AFC North, division rivals. It's like, what's up? I mean, the Bengals, yeah, we know how the Bengals are. They just find ways to beat the Bengals, but again, tough nosed defenses is like, come on now. Now the Ravens, like, it's not like I don't even want to blame the Ravens defense. I just blame the offense in that one because it's like,
yeah. I mean, like everything went against the norm. Like this game was a game that was projected to go over. I thought it would hit over, but like it ended up being like typical AFC North smash mouth football is what it ended up being, right? Yep. So like I'm right there with you, man.
Chargers, big game. Big game for either of those teams between the Bengals and the Chargers because the winner most likely feels a little bit more swagger and feeling better about themselves moving forward. The loser of the game, pretty much like more on the Bengals right now because they lost the game. It's like the Bengals now, Burrow has thrown 27 touchdown passes, got picked twice. Twice. And the Bengals are 4-7.
Sucks to suck, man.
What a conundrum. You know what I'm saying?
Sucks to suck.
I mean, it just, if they weren't down, like, if they just came out better in the first half a little bit more, 6 points in the first half and then 21 points second half, like, I don't know. So, but I mean, Herbert looked really good. He was just dropping dimes everywhere. And the second half, I know the Chargers got a little bit in the mud when it came to sputtering the offense a little bit. But it comes down to, again, just this team with John Harbaugh. He just knows how to coach. And that's interesting how, like, Brandon Staley, this pretty much the same squad almost. You'd argue he had more talent.
Yeah.
Harbaugh.
There's no argument. He did. He did have more talent, man.
Yeah. So it's just crazy how, like, coaching matters, Coaching definitely matters. That's all there is to it. I mean, the Lions, we're not going to talk about them. It's a 52-6 shellacking over the Jaguars.
Homecoming,
huh?
Yeah, I mean that's what they do with bad teams. They treat it like high school homecoming, they college homecoming.
I thought they're home cooking. Shoot,
they just run it on folks, man. That's all they do.
Tell grandma to get the mac and cheese, the cornbread ready, like, what I'm saying, the chicken wings, like all that.
A little sweet potato pie, and we'll call it good.
Yes, you know what I'm saying, like for real. Got a question in the chat, Chris. What up? Feel free to also look on the YouTube channel for us. And feel free to subscribe to the channel. Moody or McLaughlin for the rest of season. Now, is that Jake Moody? Because that's the only Moody I'm thinking about. Or McLaughlin. Who knows? But I would say probably Mooney if you have a decent, look, the Niners going to at least be in positions where they'll get, field goals. McLaughlin, man, like I know Denver's situation, the running back situation is so gross. Every freaking week,
we've been talking about it though.
It's like they say the hot hand, but it's also like the temperature of the heat keeps changing.
It's stupid.
I'm just saying, like, it's just one week you got 14 carries for estimate, the next minute you don't use him. You know what I'm saying? Then you got Javonte Williams out here doing his thing a little bit, like, and then you don't rock with him for several weeks. Like, is it one of those situations where I think Sean Payton is like literally just like not trying to tell you he's gonna use every week, and then it's gonna rotate so that one guy gets, is it one guy just plays one week and does well and gets the rest, and then the next guy. What
Sean Payton's out here trying to win real life football games. He don't care nothing about fantasy football teams, man.
Hell no, he don't.
Yeah, he don't care.
Hell no.
He don't give a
Hell
damn.
no, he don't. Hell no, he
Sean
don't.
Payton, you ain't shit if you out there listening.
I'm just saying. But what do you say to this?
Yeah, man. Like this is one of those situations where, like, if I don't know what kind of league this is in. Maybe it's Scott Fish Bowl. Maybe it's some kind of super flex league. Like, I mean, at this point, I think you're better served to go kicker than you are McLaughlin, man. Like, you know, if that's where we're at, just because we have no idea, like, what's to come, man. So, like, at least give me Moody because, I mean, the 49ers are going to move the ball, right? Like, I mean, I think one of the things that's really gotten lost in all this, and I'm already kind of, like, starting to, like, kind of compartmentalize is Brock Purdy's looked really good all year long, man. Like, he's looked really good all year long. If they don't make the playoffs or there's a collapse of epic proportions,
oh my goodness,
it's not on Brock Purdy for sure. I think there's a couple other. I don't think it is, man. Like obviously injuries on the defensive side of the ball for them, like for sure. You know, one of my buddies is you know, he's a 49ers fan. You know, shout out Derek Swanson, who took down number one, man, in the Sergeant Dignam Scott Fishbowl League or whatever. You know, shout out to him. But like, yo, like he's a big Niners fan, and it's just defensively, man, between all the injuries and all the inconsistencies on the offensive side of the ball, man. And then like I won't like tip my hand, but like I also have another piece that I want to talk about with the 49ers, man. But just give me a movie in the short.
Niners schedule moving forward. Green Bay this week, Buffalo the next. Chicago with a rough defense, and then Rams, Miami, Detroit for the fantasy football players.
I might need to catch on my little parlay I had, man. I got a little parlay with them being division winners. It was actually on the up and up. I might have to go on and get on up out real quick.
You might want to. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of the AFC, I mean the NFC West, like we don't know how the Cardinals are going to look, honestly. So who knows?
Yeah.
It's up for grabs, as they say. It is up for grabs. But in terms of what is up for grabs, you know, this week we are going to be entering, you guessed it, bye week hell.
By Mageddon,
yeah,
part one.
Bye week hell, you know, is here. This is probably, I would say, week 12 because there is no bye weeks. Week 13, week 14 will be. We'll add that. For next week's show, but that'll include the Ravens, the Broncos, the Commanders, stuff like that. The Texans are on that list. So there's definitely some significant bye week 14s, especially in a couple of weeks if you're like trying to lock up a playoff spot or just the NFL schedule gods, they're like, yo, we don't care about you guys.
Roger Goodell, the hell with you. The hell with you. You don't care about it. You and Sean Payton ain't conspiracy. Y'all don't care about our damn fantasy rosters. Y'all ain't conspiracy. Hell.
But yeah, look, like this is something that we tried to address to everybody because in terms of when your players were taking bye weeks or whatnot, whatever, you could prepare for these type of things. That's why we put this on the segment for several weeks in a row to really get you guys thinking about whether it be trades or whether it be just people you're picking up or trying to stash. Like that would be the point of just like, you know, just staying ahead of the curve. Week 14 is coming. So that'll be the last bye weeks, obviously, which will be the last week of most people's regular season. There's some leagues where they, you know, I have a league where it's the top 4. So week 15 is actually a regular season game. So week 14 is really just like, hey, like, you know, just that's pretty much. These are the bye weeks. So there's a lot we got to get into. So we'll get right into that. It's waiver wire week 12 in the building. You know what I'm saying? So George, what up? What up, my guy? Appreciate you coming through as always. For sure. George is a Memphis Grizzlies fan.
Yo, like I was gonna let you finish because I've been like just cooking tonight. I was gonna be like, look at you, man, all out here. Listen, I thought I was your favorite Tennessean, man, and you got my man out here, man. You know what I mean? I seen he was from Memphis. Shout out, baby. Yeah. M-Town, Funky Town. Let's go, baby. The Grizz. Let's do it. Let's do it.
The Ole Miss fan, though.
Yeah, we were doing good till you mentioned that. especially with Lane Kiffin. George, you was at least you 50% all right. I can like you a little bit more once the actual NCAA football season's over with. We can be friends. But other than that, right there, Lane Kiffin left me high and dry with Tennessee. But guess what? Josh Heupel looking good out there in that orange, baby.
Oh boy. All right. So if feel free everybody drop questions in the chat so that we can get to them in a timely manner. Disclaimer to just make sure you guys are mentioning league size and what scoring format you're in so we can get to the best possible answer for you. Top waivers QBs for week 12. They are listed below. We also include the super flex because I know some of you guys are in the super flex. Yeah, look, Anthony Richardson should have been stashed the moment he was a starter, just because we knew that Anthony Richardson is still the Konami code QB. Shout out Rich Rebar. Konami code QB in Anthony Richardson, where we knew this was in a range of outcomes. Where I know some of us are probably thinking, pessimistic when it comes to Anthony Richardson, probably being back on the map. But Anthony Richardson, without the 2 rushing touchdowns, like he's not as significant or whatever. But you got to also be faster than that on the waiver wire. So look, I mean, if you're in a QB bind like I was in a couple of leagues, I ran for Anthony Richardson.
Yeah.
In some of my leagues, I ran for him. Started him in a couple of leagues because I knew there was going to be some upside there when it came to just running in general. And I knew, the Jets suck against dual QBs. So it was a, recipe made in heaven or disaster, however you want to see it. But in terms of Anthony Richardson, definitely gets the top spot. We got Stafford, Russ Wilson. We got Bo Nix. We've been saying these guys for several weeks now, including Drake May and Winston. But who would you say in terms of all these guys? Like, I know Anthony Richardson gets Detroit this week, so it's like if you're in a streamer spot, like it might not be the best move to start him, but I think Anthony Richardson's still probably the most top tier guy to get if you want upside for the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, I think for me, like when I look at like these guys that are out here that you have, right? I look at like Bo Nix, man. Like Bo Nix got the Raiders. I think he's got the Raiders coming. He's got the Raiders coming up this week. So like, you got like I think that's the play. Like if you're looking at like this top tier waiver quarterbacks, I think Drake May, right? Like, man, like you're seeing it right here in front of our eyes. Like this is going to be a pretty solid quarterback class. And I think we all knew that. We just didn't know like what the order was going to be. Like I think the public probably went Jaden Daniels as number 1, Caleb Williams 2, and then like Bo Nix and Drake May was kind of like a wild card. But I think things have started to change. Although Caleb Williams really started to like tap into like his, if you will, Konami cheat code on Sunday, like using his rushing ability, which I've always said like that's one of the aspects of his game that's madly underrated. But we're not talking about him. I think Bo Nix, if we look at this group of like top QB waivers, Bo Nix is still the guy for me, for sure. And then I immediately follow that by Drake May. And then I'd go to Anthony Richardson just because of like the dual threat. And then the other 2 guys, the weather's supposed to be pretty shitty in Cleveland this week when the Steelers play. Matt Stafford, he's finally got all of his weapons. Huh?
Thursday night football game too.
Yeah, man. Oh, don't. Every time you say these things, dude, it makes me want to just like go completely old man. Like every time, like all of a sudden, like I feel like the oldest guy in the room every time when I start telling stories. But the 17-mile-an-hour winds with Ben Roethlisberger, Mike Williams, or actually it was like 27 or 37 miles an hour wind. Like it was like one of the worst games ever, man. But like that's just when the Steelers had an explosive offense. But yeah, man, like I'm still in love with Bo Nix, for sure, and I've started to become a Drake May fan, from a fantasy perspective. And I drafted him a little bit later on, like in super flex league. So that's how I look at these guys, in that aspect, man, as far as quarterbacks go.
Yeah, I love it. Super flex. I mean, look, like, week 12 buys are here, so it's like if you're in
Yeah.
a super flex league, like you know what I'm saying, we just heard Tommy DeVito's gonna officially start for the Giants, like not Drew Lock. um and just I hear I hear some gripes about from these Giants fans about Daniel Jones and stuff, and it's like you guys could have extended Barkley and then just figured it out, and you would probably
Yeah.
have more money on the books, honestly, because the running back market wasn't as so lucrative, so to speak. And so you could have easily extended Barkley, and you could have easily attacked the other positions. Like
Yeah.
now you have a quarterback that ended up getting hurt the next year, which we can't predict injuries. But it's
Nope.
like, look, like now it's like even that cemented thing. So, yeah, look, that is just a disaster. But DeVito gets a start, and we'll be interested to see how things are going. The schedule for him looks pretty okay. Like it's not too
Yeah.
bad. I think Will Levis is making some strides. Bryce Young is making some strides. Like, so they'll have some opportunity to, not exactly audition per se, because I think those guys should still be, starting quarterbacks for their franchises, barring anything crazy that happens in the off season. And then Gardner Minshew is playing for his job, playing for his next job.
Yeah.
So we'll have to see how that goes. But those are some interesting options for Superflex League as well for availability goes. Next.
Before you go next on the quarterback, I did just want to call out a couple things. Number one, those are all besides Bryce Young. Everybody else is got to worry about Shador Sanders. Part two of this, like I wanted to call.
You don't think Bryce Young's got to worry about
No,
something else?
no,
No.
no, no. And the other thing I'll call.
Like you think you feel good about that?
I don't feel it's not that I feel good about it, but I just think like when you have a quarterback that's as young as he is, like right, like these other names that we've listed here, Tommy DeVito is, like his contract is peanuts. Will Levis, like, very similar situation, right? Like they're trying to win now. Gardner Minshew, like, you know what I mean? I think realistically he's a career journeyman. Like that's just what it is. What?
DeVito's getting paid $700,000.
Right. He lived at home with his mom. Like, yo, like, what are we doing, man? He's probably eating hamburger helper. All right. So Will Levis.
That's disrespectful.
I'm out here being disrespectful.
Disrespectful to Italian people. Yeah.
Why? Because I said hamburger helper?
Yeah.
What? Like, if you listen, like
you already know Sunday dinner at the house is definitely not that.
All right. Yeah, whatever. All right. Word to Carmelo Soprano. So Will Levis, week 10, QB 9. Week 11, he was QB 20, right? But he also had a better week than some of the bigger names that like we're familiar with: Jaden Daniels, Lamar Jackson, CJ Stroud. And if we fast forward, man, like he's got a nice schedule. You talked about how he was showing some progress, right? And I think like he was a guy that like in the summer, man, we were all about like as far as like a QB2 and like, somebody that could possibly slide into QB1 territory or QB15, something like that. But the next few games, man, you got the Texans, Commanders, Jags, Bengals, and Colts. So that's just something to keep in mind, man. If you're in super flex leagues or you're trying to navigate through Armageddon and you're in deeper leagues or anything like that. So I just wanted to make sure I called that out tonight, man.
Definitely. Definitely appreciate that for sure. Puffin season is here. And no, we're not talking about your dating status.
That's exactly where I was going. That's exactly where I was going.
We're talking about running backs and just preparing for injuries, even though we haven't seen too many of them. These are the guys in which we should be monitoring on our waivers, especially for some of these guys. Either especially to Ray Davis, because he's going on by, he may get dropped because people, depending on how your league stash benches are, like he might get cut for someone that might have to play this week because they have to play somebody in general. Yeah, Trey Benson's coming off the bye, so he's either on rosters. Hopefully, you got him right before Monday Night Football started on, just to get a leg up on your competition, or you stashed him already. Cam Akers is interesting because he is starting to look like the clear RB2 in Minnesota with Aaron Jones. He hasn't scored over 10 points in the last several weeks in terms of production for fantasy purposes. So not sure exactly what's going on, but something we got to definitely monitor. Someone we could potentially even start this week for some some standalone value because we're dealing with all these bye weeks. And then there's some other names here that you may want to mention, Johnny, in terms of just some of these running backs. So, who's your favorite? I know Ray Davis is we hold very high.
Yo, there's a
No.
couple guys. I'm like president of their fan club. Ray Davis is one of those guys. And then like Trey Benson, man. Like for me, like I'm a James Conner fan. I own James Conner in a couple leagues. But I just think like, you know, we're starting to see like Trey Benson get worked into the mix for the Cards. So I think there's that. And then from there, like if I had to pick like outside of like Ray Davis and Trey Benson, if I had to pick a guy, I'm probably gonna go Jalen Wright, just because the Dolphins, I think, are approaching quickly a situation where they're not going to have anything to play for. And like we're talking to you guys tonight as far as like stashes and like trying to win like a fantasy championship, right? So like I think like Raheem Mostert, like, you know, he's been banged up, he's been in and out. Far fall from the guy who led the league in rushing touchdowns last year. Right? So like now all of a sudden, like, hey man, like let's see what we got here. I think he's somebody that's really interesting coming down the stretch. I think Blake Corum, like, it's just wishful thinking, man. It's nostalgia, man. It's like thinking like your ex-girlfriend's gonna get back with you. Like she's not. That's Blake Corum. You know what I mean? Like I'm just keeping the $150 out here tonight. You know what I mean? And Gus Edwards, man, fresh legs. Like yeah, I'm just cooking tonight. And Gus Edwards in that offense, right? Like, I think he still has some value there. I think some familiarity inside of that offense. Kenneth Gainwell has been a guy that's been, you know, he's been a name and he's been hanging around, you know, since the Eagles won their Super Bowl. So I think he's always going to be in play, right? So like for me, that's kind of like what I'm looking at. And then like, you know, you talked about Cam Akers and you talked about Aaron Jones a little bit. This was my fear for Aaron Jones is like at this point in time of the year, just in general, that like there was going to become a point in time where like you just couldn't count on him. Like he wouldn't be stable. And I think we're kind of starting to see that. So like cuffing season is in full effect. You know what I mean? Like it's starting to get cold. You know what I mean? I don't want to say income tax checks is coming in and stuff like that, but you know what I mean?
It's a little too soon.
A little too soon.
Just a little bit too soon.
Oh,
Braylon Allen also gets deserved to be added to the list because I'm sure people will be dropping him potentially this week as well. And I think that might be a mistake a little bit because obviously, you know, there's only so much that Breece Hall is going to be probably playing at this point, and for what more? He probably could be one of those guys that could probably just finish the season, you know, really well for us, like he did, you know, last year as well. But there's also that slight chance that Braylon Allen could get a little bit more usage because you want to just save Breece Hall a little bit, you know, for more meaningful games, hopefully next year, but. At the same time, like, you know, gotta go get your money.
Don't you dare put that on my Breece Hall shares, man. Don't you dare put that on. Y'all suck. Keep playing Breece Hall.
Really?
Yeah, y'all suck, man. I'm sorry.
All right.
It's calling it what it. You listen. I will send that to you digitally. You ain't got to write it down. I'll send it to you digitally. They suck.
I'm not writing it down. I'm just taking notes.
What? Because I said I want what? Breece Hall to play more?
No. Keep that same energy.
I didn't say anything bad about Braylon Allen. I just said the Jets suck. That's all.
I know. That's what I'm talking about. Like, I'm just taking notes. Don't worry about me. I'm just taking notes. Don't worry about me over here. Just taking notes.
Yeah, I bet you. Yeah.
I mean, Jalen Wright deserves to be on this list because, like, Raheem Mostert, we've been telling everybody. I told everybody all fucking summer long. Devon Achane is the guy.
Yes, your man. I'll give
you that. Mostert might get more touches. The Jalen Wright guy might get more touches.
I'll give you that one. You was on that one. You was on. You was on. I'll give you that one. I'll give you that one.
You know, appreciate it. But the Jalen Wright still deserves to be on this list because he's a younger version of a Raheem Mostert, and if something were to happen, like Jalen Wright overall is there. So definitely, if you have Achane, whatever, cuff him. Just because you never know if Miami starts slipping out and they start doing weird things because they've already done that this year. So, but yeah, I mean, look, everybody else here, just deserves. I think Cam Akers is probably just a guy that you still want to add this week for the standalone value. Just because in general, like he can pop up, but it is against Chicago this week, so it is a little bit of a rougher matchup. But again, 6 teams on bye. It's like we're just trying to find creative ways to get some points on the board this week. So that could be a route that you can go in. For the waivers this week, it becomes weird. Because there's not so many options when it comes to the waivers. It's gonna really depend waiver on your waiver. It's gonna really determine like what is gonna be what for your league specifically. The Raiders running backs, we have to talk about it a little bit more in depth because the injury reports are still unclear. We're talking about this on Tuesday night, in which we have, Madison left the game with an ankle injury. Then Zamir White left with a quad injury. So then we're down to Amir Abdullah. God, talk about, trying to be relevant for the last 5 years. And then we have, the rookie Dylan Lowby. So in terms of how this could definitely break down, if Zamir White is playing this week, he is someone I would want to prioritize if I needed a running back to start this week because he is the first and second down bruiser, and then Amir Abdul would be the pass catching back. It's clearly Dylan Lowby would be the third stringer. If White's out, because we're expecting probably Madison to not play this week with that ankle injury because it looked like it was more of a sprain, but it seemed like it's a little bit more of still seems like something that's going to be more sore-ish, maybe enough to keep him out. Again, who knows? Again, we're talking about this Tuesday night. But I think Amir Abdullah would be in play because, again, you have Brees Hall on bye, you have James Cook on bye, you have Alvin Kamara on bye. Like, this is again,
bye.
And then in terms of the Ravens running back situation, I put Justice Hill because he's more game script dependent, just like Keaton Mitchell is, but Keaton Mitchell is ultimately the guy that you still want to get on your teams because Keaton Mitchell still has that breakaway, speed, and could be still a difference maker down the stretch, depending on what Ravens game scripts look like moving forward. It's hard to figure out when you would start one of these guys between Hill and Mitchell. But it's also where, just like we just saw the Ravens do this past week with these weird, again, not having Henry on your final play and you need to tie the game up on. It's like the Ravens do some weird things to do game script dependent stuff. So they do that. So again, the running backs are very thin this week. It's just going to depend on what your league is. And if you guys got questions in regards to that, feel free to drop that. But any other thoughts about running back for you, Johnny, in terms of how strategically we should be hitting this thing?
Well, I mean, the Raiders have the Broncos this week, so you have to keep that into consideration. So you mentioned game script, which you're spot on with that, right? So I think if you're thinking about the Raiders and you want to approach any of those running back situations, Amir Abdullah, Dylan Lowby, that's where you got to be looking at, right? They're both pass catchers. Amir Abdullah, man, is somebody I was actually really high on when he first came into the league. So I think you have to obviously take that into consideration. Justice Hill, as far as what they have, getting ready to come up there, playing the Chargers, which should be a really interesting game because I feel not to get into our Sunday preview, but this game could go way over or way under. So there's no in between for this game here. You know what I mean? So when I think about that, that's something to take into consideration. And then as we move forward, the Ravens, they have the Eagles the week after. So that could potentially be a shootout. AJ Brown coming out party if you're still relevant. And then after that, there's about a 14-day gap. So I'm assuming they have a bye there. And then they play the Giants, which they're just probably going to line up, smack the Giants in the face. Lamar Jackson's going to throw 4 or 5 touchdowns. We're going to be like, oh, he's back in the MVP race. And then they play the Steelers again. Yeah, so that's where I'm at. And then I see you got Roschon, not to be confused.
Roschon Johnson we added.
Yeah.
And it's because he's now it's because Khalil Herbert's not in town anymore. I think Roschon Johnson just needs to be owned. Because the way they use Roschon Johnson is different from DeAndre Swift. Swift's going to be your boundary running back where they run zone. They'll run his own running blocking scheme. They'll get him at the edge. With Roschon Johnson, they're going to run him right between the tackles. He could potentially be the goal line back as well. So there's value there. where that goes. And again, on a thin running back week, we got to think about creative options to, deploy into our lineups potentially, or just stash to find out what happens. But the running back is definitely a precarious situation because there's again so many teams on bye this week to fill in for our rosters. Next we got is the wide receivers, 2 different tiers for the week. A lot of options depending on what, again, what format you're in. Um, the guys I probably want to highlight is somewhat, again, let's talk about Elijah Moore real quick, right?
Yeah.
We talk about Elijah Moore.
Let's do it.
We're talking about an offense in Cleveland that has really looked way different with Winston at quarterback versus, you know, past people.
Deshaun Watson.
I lost someone named, Deshaun Watson. Somebody named that, right? I think it was a guy, right?
Yeah, meanwhile, he's just racking up that premium subscription and what he's got going on, but we ain't gonna talk about that.
Oh boy, you're on fire tonight, aren't you?
I am.
Since Winston's played at quarterback, he has thrown 41, 41, and 46, and these are all pass attempts. And Elijah Moore has been getting these targeted 12, 9, 8 in that span. It goes, so this is definitely PPR leagues. But then we talk about Jerry Jeudy, who just went the hell off this past week.
He did, bro.
He most likely isn't on a waiver wire, unless you're in more of a shallower league. And even then, it's like you're probably still got crazy studs at receiver. But in terms of the breakout, 6 catches, 142 yards, and a touchdown.
It is.
You know what I'm saying? And he got heavily favored with targets. So people thought it was going to be Cedric Tillman and stuff. Like, it just wasn't the case in this game. Jerry Jeudy just went the heck off this week. But Elijah Moore can still be that steady Eddie receiver that you got, especially for bye week fill-ins this week. He's probably the one that's going to be a little bit more available when it comes to some of your rosters. So, because Jerry Jeudy's ownership right now is 68% in sleeper currently. So the availability for him is probably not going to be there. Elijah Moore, he's more likely to get. And I just think in terms of, again, what we're dealing with this week and the notion of we got to start somebody for production this week. We got to start somebody. And Elijah Moore, the Browns play your Pittsburgh Steelers. I know it's on Thursday night, but hey, I think it's something where third receiver easily. Elijah Moore even finished as a wide receiver 16 this past week. So it's just someone where I think immediate production could definitely prevail. Some of the other guys on this list, I mean, look, your guy, another one of your guys, right?
Yeah.
Another one of your guys.
Yeah.
Christian Watson.
Came through, but he came through in a clutch when you needed him, brother. Yeah.
Oh boy. What are you drinking over there?
Just a little Dos Equis. I'm all good. I'm just on I'm on fire, and I'm hyped because like one of my biggest burdens that was weighing me down was my Scott Fishbowl team, and today I'm like, all right, I'm not gonna make the playoffs. I'm cool with it. Every other team I own,
he's at peace with it.
Yeah. Every other team I own is playoff relevant, so I can shed that, so I'm good.
Look, Christian Watson, they were all bigger plays this past week. And what we can say about Christian Watson is that this is the type of performance where in terms of Christian Watson, in terms of these Packers, if we look back a couple years ago, Watson had one of these games a couple years back, and then that's kind of how things flowed for him the rest of the season. He kind of just started breaking out out of nowhere. Could that happen the same way? It's definitely possible. Jaden Reed, he scored a touchdown in this past week's game, but I don't know. Who knows who's going to be a consistent receiver week to week basis? Who knows? But I think Christian Watson is one of those guys that we need to reevaluate a little bit, because in games they're going to be more competitive. Watson's going to show his face. San Francisco, Miami, not the best matchups for receiver cornerback matchup. But then for the playoffs, well, sorry, week 14 against Detroit. And then for the playoffs, Seattle, New Orleans, no Marshawn Lattimore, and Minnesota. So, look, all these matchups for the playoffs, we have to keep in mind for Watson as well. And I just think that I did stash Christian Watson. I did pick him up in one league before things started on Sunday. And I'm like, ooh, okay. All right, we got a little something there. We cooking a hot grease now. But those are guys I wanted to highlight. It's here too. I'll say Adonai Mitchell is always someone that with Anthony Richardson at quarterback, it's funny because when Joe Flacco's at quarterback, we're all more about Josh Downs and the check downs and stuff like that, whatever, the short area targets. Now with Anthony Richardson in the game, I think Adonai Mitchell, also Alec Pierce deserves to be in this conversation. If Pittman's healthy, which we don't think he is.
Man,
he just should have went on the IR in my opinion. He should have saved his body up a little bit. But with Adonai Mitchell, he's the most intriguing, guy as well. And then Westbrook-Ikhine also as well, because he's going to be a guy that comes very cheap. No one's really going to be paying attention to him like that, even though he did break out this past week. Because everyone's just thinking it's Tennessee. But then going back to what we said a couple of weeks ago about Calvin Ridley, this Tennessee receiver room is going to get easier matchups down the stretch.
Yes.
I guess Westbrook-Ikhine had a crazy 96 something yard touchdown that made his whole day, but it's still going to be weak secondaries that are playing the rest of the year, and we have to pay attention to that for matchups.
Yeah, I would say for me, just a couple call outs super quick. For me, one of the names that really sticks out is QJ for the Chargers. Obviously, Quentin Johnson. Man, we've been talking about it, man. Justin Herbert, and we even talked about it, and some people even brought it up during the offseason. Yes, Harbaugh wants to run the ball, but you can't put a round peg into a square hole, and I think Harbaugh's starting to see that as far as Herbert and just his arm talent. I don't think he's ever played or ever had a quarterback that can quarterback the way Justin Herbert quarterbacks. Yeah, I said all that double negative intentionally because Justin Herbert he's just somebody that was just born to play the quarterback.
Gifted.
Yeah, man, he's just born to play the quarterback position. And I think you ask any fantasy guy, man, we're oh yeah, okay. And I think there just became a point in time, man, where he just became too much of a value in best ball and season-long drafts and stuff like that. Well, yeah, Quentin Johnson, man, over the last 3 weeks, man, he's been a top 12 wide receiver, 190 yards and 3 touchdowns. A lot of that came in one game, but still, though, right? He still plays with the talent we've been talking about. And then Christian Watson, you mentioned it all. I think we're at a place now where it's not about what you've done. It's about what are you capable of doing moving forward. And I think Christian Watson and a healthy Jordan Love gives you the ability to have a big play, game changer at wide receiver, especially now at this point in time of the year, you're talking wide receiver 3, flex, 4, flex, anything like that right there. And to have Christian Watson as somebody that you can roll out, I think is a huge asset. You mentioned the Browns wide receivers. I think it's murky territory because all of a sudden, you look around and it's all right, Jerry Jeudy was a high draft pick that has elite route running skills. Elijah Moore is somebody that fantasy managers over the last 3 to 4 years is somebody that believed in when he played with your wait a minute. Yeah, with your Jets. Sorry. Oh man, that's amazing. Yeah, hilarious, just like Mike Williams. But then you also have I'm in my bag tonight. Cedric Tillman, same thing, right? And then David Njoku. You look around and it's man, all of a sudden these skill players for digital. These skill players for the Browns aren't that bad. So it's just a matter of just identifying which matchup is the correct matchup to play. So I think there's that. And then another one I want to call out is Pop Douglas. 15 receptions over the last 3 weeks, but it's only been on 20 targets. So just be careful when you're dipping into the Pop Douglas pool for sure. When you think about that, but the rest of these guys, I think we know what it is. But you mentioned all of our waiver wire guys. I just want to take 2 to 3 minutes just to highlight a couple of things. Where has Deebo Samuel been over the last couple of weeks with the San Francisco 49ers. That's
I'm
what I wanted.
excited.
One of the things like I wanted to call out. Like
I'm
he
excited.
literally he had 12 points in week 10, 6 in week 11, and he's been wide receiver 40 over the last 2 weeks. When last year Deebo Samuel was somebody that if you had on your roster, he was essentially carrying your roster to get into the playoffs and making a playoff run. And then Zay Flowers has kind of cooled down a little bit as well. So I just wanted to call those things out, right? Just for like people that like own them, just to be like, all right, like, hey, like obviously if you have Deebo, you have to play him. Zay Flowers, like we talked about, like what it looks like for the Ravens moving forward. And then my dark horse in all of this, somebody that we don't have here, is Ray McLeod. 92 routes ran over the last handful of weeks, 12 receptions, 1 touchdown. He's been on the fringe of like a flex play here as of late. And he's over the last couple of weeks, like he's had, better weeks than guys like Devontae Smith. So I just think it's interesting as we're coming down the stretch, and you can take that as, hey, Devontae Smith might be on the potential for a potential blow up game. Zay Flowers might be back for a blow-up game, or Deebo might be up for a blow-up game. So just some things I wanted to call out as we're talking about our wide receiver priorities here in this segment, man.
Yeah, I feel you. I didn't mind the Ray McLeod segment. It's more about, I think the premise of all this was to showcase receivers that have, like you talked about, we're in a time of the year where we want guys that have the ceilings.
Yeah.
That could potentially have massive ceilings for us in games where, and points of the season now where like we need that versus like the floor. So it's understandable. I didn't mind Ray McLeod. The upside I just haven't really seen from him all year because he's technically still the 4th option in Atlanta, but it's understandable. I add him to your roster for sure. Because you never know. Just remember, Atlanta's on bye.
Yeah, right.
Oh
Facts.
boy. Tight ends we go to. Taysom White Chocolate Hill.
Jay Will, where you at, baby? Trademark infringement, baby. Call it blue magic. Call it whatever you want. Just don't call it blue magic.
Oh man, yeah. Well, happy I started him in the cookout league because I needed every point.
Oh, here we go. You were damn near like, God, I hate my team, and like,
I didn't say that. I just hate Joe Mixon. What?
You didn't say that?
I hate my team. I just hate that I was going to lose to Mixon, is what I said.
Oh, you don't mean back in September? I'm on my Spanish kick today. You didn't say September. He was like, man, why'd I draft all these tight ends?
Are you talking about months ago?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. I can say that.
Okay. All right.
And I always say that about my team. I always say that about my teams though, because when it's draft season, you don't necessarily know, really.
I guess we're two different people.
Never feel too comfortable.
I very, very rarely do I walk away saying that. If anything, I'll walk away trying to justify my team. If my team is really good, I'll just be like, yo, I crushed this draft. I'll tell you I crushed the draft. If my team sucks, I try to justify it.
No, I always try to give some more pessimism on my selections because I always go on the micro of like, I took him there, but I should have took him there. Just end the third. But I'm happy with the construction of my team. As I always say too, so.
Yeah. If I start trying to explain to you why my team is good, that means my team really sucks. But like, if I just tell you, like my team, if I tell you, my team is gonna be a beast, and you just hating, that means you're in trouble.
I understand that. I can understand that. I feel you. Taysom Hill, man. This guy put on a performance for the ages, including a 75-yard freaking rushing touchdown.
Gallop.
Oh my gosh, yo! Like how? Like the way he was running, I'm like, no one's gonna tackle him.
Oh man, I'm gonna shut up because I'm just gonna let it fly. Yeah, I'm just gonna let it fly tonight. Looking like the unsanctified Tim Tebow out there running.
It's past the second level and then just runs.
Yeah, I know. I seen it. I was like, oh my god. I was like, whew.
What?
Yeah.
I just couldn't believe what I was watching.
You know what we should call him? We should call him Universe 2.0. He's just out here just killing the game. Universe Taysom Hill.
Oh man, just this. Like I said, the stat line, the stat line obviously is out of this world. I don't think we're gonna expect another performance like that, but I will say he deserves to be a very high waiver claim this week, even though he's on bye, because the tight end position in your league definitely sucks for the most part. Unless you have, you know what I'm saying? Like, unless you have, I don't know, like tight end.
There you know, I don't know. Like that's him. Jonnu maybe,
Yeah.
Jonnu might be the only other guy you could make a hard claim for, man. Yeah. I mean, that's it.
Yeah. So I mean,
Taysom's him.
Like, Taysom is him, is right. But also when we're talking about the New Orleans Saints like situation, the reason why Taysom Hill is now getting all this usage, he was getting some of this usage already, but why it's coming at such a point in the season now that he's getting all this because Jamal Williams hasn't been healthy. Kendrick Miller, like he was on the IR. So that's basically it's been Alvin Kamara or who else at running back, right? So there's that. The receiver core decimated.
No Chris
Olave, he's on the IR.
Yeah,
he's out for the year. Who else? You know, Bud Means was even on the IR. They had used him a little bit. So you're using your fourth string receivers. You're using tight ends that aren't as effective.
Yeah, Rashid Shaheed. Like, yeah, it's attrition, man. It's attrition.
It sure is. So again, like 8 carries, 50 yards. You know what I'm saying? Sorry, 7 carries, 138 yards, 3 touchdowns.
Put some respect on his name.
8 catches. He had 8 catches, 50 yards.
So out here looking like Tim Tebow and Cordell Stewart all wrapped up in one.
It was definitely an amazing.
But prepare for him to come out and roll you out a 7-point game too. So
pretty much. Yeah,
be prepared for that. Be prepared for that.
After the bye.
Yeah, be prepared for that. We've been here before.
So if it's fab, it's more of like a situation. I like to do a fab thing versus like actual waiver claim, but you have to pick him up to find out what he does next against the Rams after the bye. So we'll see what happens. Jonnu Smith came out and surprised everybody. In some ways, like we knew Miami's passing, routing and trees were more 50-50 this year. It was like 70-something% to the receivers last year. Now it's more 50-50 between receivers and running back and tight end usage for Tua. And Jonnu Smith has shown why he was, a guy that not only that, he's always been a pretty talented tight end when it comes to like his, his burst and speed and his athleticism. But the way Miami has used him this season, and it really came up, I would say like the game probably against like, I don't know, even when they played on like against Indianapolis several weeks back, like when they didn't have 2 in the lineup where Jonnu Smith had 7 catches, 96 yards, and a touchdown. Like that was when I was like, all right, Jonnu Smith needs to be a little bit more watched upon because he could be one of those tight ends that could break out. But in the last couple weeks before this breakout, the snap percentages were all over the place, and now he's had this big blow-up game. 6 catches, 101, 2 scores. And now we're looking at Jonnu Smith as, a guy that hopefully can start for us at tight end the rest of the year. We don't have to really worry about it. We're hoping that's the case.
But yeah, man, but Jonnu Smith, man, like going back to his Tennessee Titan days, man, like he showed athleticism, like, when he was there. And then obviously he ended up like with the Pats. And I think like he ended up with the Falcons after the fact. But like he's always had the athletic ability as well, man, like to be like a significant piece, like when we talk about like the tight end position, because like tight end is truly about the haves and the have-nots. And like he was always someone that was like in between there. Like you could see like these flashes of him athletically. So like for me to say like I didn't see this coming, I would kind of be like, no, that's not true. But like I think everybody just kind of like wrote him off like after he went to New England and signed that big contract and then he didn't deliver. But then obviously anytime like you're in a Miami Dolphin offense with like speed kills down there, like with all the pieces that they have, I think this is just a situation where like, it's just, he's the guy picking up the crumbs. And fortunately for all the tight end, for all the people that have him and like the tight end position, like those crumbs have actually been like, filet mignon steaks, honestly, for him, man. Like this year, like it just is what it is, man. As far as tight end goes,
Totally. And yeah, look, Jonathan Smith, Miami doesn't have straight the schedule for the tight ends
Yeah.
is not good for them. After these next couple of weeks, but you're hoping at least that Jonathan Smith is again startable for you for this week. If you're, again, Taysom Hill on by, Kyle Pitts on by, just you know, the tight end for Buffalo is, the tight ends, Knox, Kincaid,
Dawson
whatever,
Knox,
on by.
Kincaid, yeah.
So yeah, it's like again, I think he could probably potentially be in a situation where you could start him against New England this week. It's possible.
Revenge game.
Definitely a revenge game. I'm not rooting for either one of those teams, but it's a revenge game for him. Will Dissly is the next tight end, and Dissly, in my eyes, is someone that we had said already to pay attention to a couple weeks ago, because his usage expanded when it came to him being a part of more of the Chargers, like starting tight end. A couple weeks ago when Hayden Hurst, he got injured a couple weeks ago, and then that shot up Dissly's route percentage from about I want to say 58% to it ended up shooting to 73, and then stayed around 70, and then he just became the starter. Dissly, 4 catches, 80 yards, and a touchdown this past week. So it down the stretch, they have some good matchups coming for the tight end for Dissly. So you're hoping that the games upcoming, it's Baltimore, it's Atlanta, KC, Tampa, Denver, then New England. You're hoping Dissly is now a rock solid, startable tight end for you, because these games all coming up are either against teams that are vying for playoff positions, or are already there and just needing to win. So you're hoping that because of the competitive nature in these games, Will Dissly is also a guy that is a tight end that you could feel really good about starting moving forward. When it comes to the rest of these Chargers receivers and stuff like that we talked about, I just think Will Dissly is a guy that, because he's finally shown that he's a tight end that you could use on a startable basis. Because if you remember Will Dissly, he was part of that tight end trio in Seattle.
Yes, sir.
And then none of them none of them wowed you or any way. So so it's just fun. It's just funny how that has happened now for Will Dissly. And again, coming up, the Chargers have some good teams upcoming for some game script material that could really help Dissly's value in terms of you having a starter sit decision. So I think he's well worth picking up in some of your leagues this week and upcoming. I know you want to talk about someone here, so feel free to go ahead.
Yeah, just my guy, man. Isaiah Likely. That's really the only guy, man. Just to keep talking about it. Yeah, just to keep. Yeah, I'm gonna keep talking about him, man. Just because I think it might not be obviously this year. I think it's been a situation where he's muddied the water for the Falcons, and I would always say this, right? If you have a player like Isaiah Likely who can muddy the water with a tight end like Mark Andrews, who we've looked at and kind of put in the upper echelon, I think there's absolutely a future for him. Whether it's on this team or whether it's with another team, whatever the case may be, I'm just going to keep going back to the well with him, right? Especially the way that the tight end position has been over the last handful of weeks, or just in general, just all year long, right? I'm going to keep going back to him and not have a problem with it. I would rather have him than a Sam Laporta, or even in some instances, I'm just looking Kyle Pitts has had a bit of a shit show over the last 3 weeks, right? So for me, I'm gonna continue to keep playing Isaiah Likely and just hope that he gets me that 8 points, maybe a touchdown to bring me to 15 or something like that. Theo Johnson is a guy. I think there's Theo Johnson and Tavion Sanders are 2 guys that I think athletically give you the option. So if you want to punt tight end, or you got buys, we're talking about with Buy-Mageddon Part 1, those are 2 guys that you can absolutely plug and play. And Bryce Young, for whatever the case may be, over the last 2 weeks, he ain't looked that bad. So maybe there's something in common with him and Anthony Richardson by being on the JV team, as Mike Tomlin would call it, over the last couple of weeks, and getting out and playing some varsity ball. So like I feel comfortable. If you want to, if you want to throw a couple darts there, with Theo Johnson and Jatavion Sanders for sure. And like I said, man, Isaiah Likely's just a guy that like, I didn't play him this week. I played in our cookout league. I played Dalton Schultz over him just because obviously the matchup, right? But like I still feel like, if you have Isaiah Likely and you're down the tight end, go ahead and run it, man, for sure.
Yeah, like Theo Johnson is becoming more and more involved in the Giants team. And now a Giants team, which is a lot more like you're going with more inexperience. Theo Johnson now at least has 85% of the team's offensive snaps. The last several weeks now, and now them coming off the bye, like I think Theo Johnson has an opportunity to at least be has a hidden ceiling potentially for the back half of this upcoming next several weeks, where again tight ends just getting weird and thin, and you're looking for guys to hopefully step up. And again, Tommy DeVito starting at quarterback, like you got some of these other receivers for the Giants. Like I think Theo Johnson could finally find his way in this thing, and then same thing with Jatavion Sanders. Like, it's about time. The Panthers recognize him as the guy that they drafted in the second round of this year. He's just one of those tight ends that has off the charts athleticism, and you should be getting the ball in his hands just simply because he's sure-handed and he's quick.
Yeah.
Again, you're facing the Chiefs this week off a loss. So you're hoping that with Sanders, he not only he's getting more of the offensive usage snaps as well, but it's also the Panthers are now playing a little bit more. Now they're starting to play a little bit more 11 personnel with more 3 receiver sets with Sanders just in there by himself. So that's what they should have done. I know they wanted to play Tommy Tremble and Ian Thomas and all these guys, but I think Sanders, he's one of those guys that easily for PPR leagues in general, like he's going to be a guy that he definitely should be on your rosters, and you should definitely think about potentially starting him coming down the stretch because Panthers are going to be playing from behind so many times. And it's just some cheap volume potentially. So I definitely love when it comes to Jatavion Sanders. We loved him all year long, talked about him in the offseason as well. Like he's someone that if he gets his opportunity, he could be a guy.
Yes, sir.
So he could be a guy. And there's that to it. So next we got the streaming defenses. So we got a couple of those streaming defensive options. The Bucks, the Commanders, the Chargers. Bucks taking on the Giants. Commanders taking on Dallas. And the Chargers taking on the Ravens. I know it seems a little scary on paper for the Chargers, but honestly, the way that the Chargers have been playing, I like starting defenses every once in a while that can just get after the quarterback, that can make defensive stops, and that's where the Chargers can definitely make their money on. When it comes to these defenses, that's where I like in terms of the Bucks potentially because facing DeVito, but the Bucks haven't been like so solid on defense, but they're readily more available. Than some of the other defenses here, and then like I said, Washington taking on Dallas, like it's just again Cooper Rush didn't look that bad, this time around. But it was more about like, all right, like Cooper Rush gonna throw for a lot of yardage, but will they score?
Right.
Right. You gotta ask. Was there a defense you had in mind in terms of?
No, man, I think like you nailed it. Like, right, the Bucks going against the Giants and DeVito. Like, I think like the only thing is right. Like we've seen this happen before, where sometimes a backup quarterback and like changes on offense can they could be playing a little bit over their head. So like I'll be interested to see how that shakes out. I think the Commanders, like when you look at these teams, the Commanders is, in my opinion, that's the safest defense for sure going against Dallas because like we just seen what happened and the Commanders have something to play for. I think the Chargers, in my opinion, I get where you're coming from for sure, but I think it's a little bit risque just because of like
Of course it is.
the Ravens and like what just happened, right? And now like they're coming back to they're coming back to play a team that like isn't in the AFC North, but also there's a lot of familiarity there. the Hardball Bowl, which I could
Yep.
fucking do without, to
Hardball
be
bowl.
honest. Like I could absolutely fucking do without. Like between all of them, like if anything, like I actually like Jim a lot more just because like Jim was pretty cool when he played like Captain Comeback and he played with Marshall Falk. But then when they beat the Steelers, that really made me not like him. So I don't like him as much as like I don't like John. So like I could really do without it. And honestly, I'll probably catch a nap on Sunday Night Football this week. But like yeah, I think the Commanders are probably the safest out of this group, if you ask me.
Yeah, that's fair to say. Um, there's definitely some risk, and because like fantasy defenses are definitely drying the hell up. So
Yeah, they are, bro.
um,
You ain't lying on that one.
it's kind of what it is, you know.
Yeah.
And that's what we got for that. Any final thoughts you want to leave with the people, Johnny?
My final thoughts, like I would leave you guys with, man, for sure. Like that just like really stuck out to me is like talking about oh yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, get your rocks off, you sick motherfucker. Uh Will Levis and the Tennessee Titans and just what they got coming down the stretch. Like, if you have Will Levis, if you have Calvin Ridley, like you've obviously endured a lot of bad games, but like I think this could be a group that could help you get over the hump. For sure. That's one of my takes, like for sure, is the Titans and just like what they offer. And then like obviously you got the Pittsburgh Steelers on Thursday night football this week. Be mindful of the weather. I know I'm sounding even older as I talk about the weather, but like I guess it's supposed to be like snow and sleet and shit. So just keep that in mind if you're thinking about rolling out Russ or GP. If you got Najee, like man, what a great opportunity, him and Jalen Warren. But like we're in a situation now, man. Like we're Mageddon Part 1 is happening right now. So then obviously we have Mageddon Part 2 coming in week 14, man. But other than that, man, again, just want to say, man, shout out to, everybody that we got like watching this right here for sure. Don't be afraid to leave us any feedback about like what we can do better or what you guys would like to see, et cetera, et cetera. And if you're here, make sure you tune into the show on Sunday morning as well, man.
Nailed it. I would say that, look, it's getting down to it, people. Most exciting time if you are in contention. If you're not, then you're a sucker. You're a sucker. You're a loser. Like
He said
better luck
sucker
next
and
year.
loser.
Yeah, better luck next year.
That's fair.
It is what it is.
Yeah.
Just better luck next year. Play
Yeah.
harder. You know what I'm saying?
Try
Make
harder.
trades
Do
maybe.
better.
Actually make some trades maybe. I know some leagues I'm in, just like people don't make no trades, and they wonder why their record stinks. So it's like,
Here we go. Here we
you
go.
didn't
Trade
try.
guy.
You
Trade
didn't
guy.
try harder.
The
You
trade
didn't
guy.
try.
Hustle man.
You
Hustle
definitely didn't
man.
try.
Bro, man from the fifth floor.
Nah, stop. Nah, it's just again like you're just not hustling hard enough. So that's what it
That's
is.
fair. That's fair.
But in terms of how things are moving forward, like I said, like we've been saying all podcasts, week 12 buys, 6 teams on buy, it absolutely stinks. Just make sure you're paying attention to who's getting plucked from the waiver and also who's people dropping, because you never know, these people who are dropping could be opportunities for you. Because again, like where some leagues we have a short bench where like 5 people or you can only hold on your bench. And it's like people are only thinking about this week. And like we've said to you guys before, thinking about this week, the next week, the week after, because there's always opportunities to look to weeks ahead where you may need a guy that's going to be in a better position. And then again, week 14 buys are coming up too. So you just got to be mindful of what is happening in your league transactional wise, especially now with most of your leagues not having a trade deadline anymore. No more trades are happening. So yeah, if you guys got trade, if you need trade advice, feel free to hit us up on the Twitter, or people say X now, but we say Twitter because we are seasoned.
You won't call yourself old, but you sure will call me old, though. You ain't shit.
Nope. I was talking about. Anyway, at Nick _ Wilcox 25 on the X, at Johnny JONY Maine MAINE 37185 on the X. feel free to come check us out there. If you guys are listening to us on Spotify, we appreciate that. The Fantasy Football Show, DA Fantasy Football Show. And if you're on Twitter, on YouTube, feel free to like and sub to the channel. We will see you guys on Sunday as we will be going over everything there is to know about your DFS, your props, your bets, your picks, and your starts and sits. We look forward to seeing you guys at 10:30 a.m. Eastern. There, if you're listening to the pod on Spotify, feel free to do so as well. We appreciate all the love you guys bring to us on a weekly basis. And we look forward to serving you guys in the next show. We'll see you guys.